Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, why is the NCAA looking to fix something that's not broken? We're also talking Red Raider hoops. We'll talk a transfer that Chris Level feels optimistic about becoming a Red Raider. He was on campus this week, hint, hint. And also, we'll get you set for Texas Tech and Oklahoma. Got a special Friday edition of Locked On Texas Tech coming up this week, so we're getting into the primer for the Red Raiders and Sooners. Saturday night from United Supermarkets Arena. Next on Locked On Texas Tech.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're going to start this thing off right. Raider! Everything runs through Lubbock.
Thanks for joining us again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day with the only Chris Level. I'm KyeRon, always appreciative of being your first listen each day on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. We got plenty to dive into today. A lot of hoops on our minds, doing something a little bit different with Friday's episode. So we will be looking ahead to the Oklahoma Sooners today as the Red Raiders prepare to host OU Saturday night from United Supermarkets Arena. We'll also get to a personnel conversation. Mark Adams and company had a big visitor in town for the Kansas game. Power 5 basketball player right now. Could it be a Red Raider in the future? We will get to Kyron Lindsay coming up also. But first, starting in a hoops universe, Chris, that you and I hold near and dear. That's March Madness. That's NCAA tournament time. And you've kind of had this smoke swirling around the tournament for some period of time now that it needed to be tinkered with, I guess. It needed to be fixed, even though it wasn't broken. Hey, it's great. We love it. Why not add more? A lot of different ideas floating around out there, but I want to get to what essentially was a recommendation this week, I guess, if I'm understanding it correctly, to expand the son of a gun. It seems like whatever comes about, Chris, they want more of what has been a great thing so far.
Yeah, this is like a committee that has been asked to kind of look at different things in college athletics and try to recommend improvements, or this is what's kind of needs to be tweaked. It does not mean by any means that this is what's going to happen, but one of the recommendations was we think you should expand the men's and women's that's the other thing too, to 90 teams, and roughly that is about 25% of the Division I teams that are participating in the sport of basketball for the women and the men. Okay, so there's like 358 and 363, depending on the boys or girls side of things. But yeah, roughly 25% what would make the tournament. So you're talking about like, hey, 21 seed, Fordham going to play 2 seed, so it would just expand. So do I think that there's a big push for this? No. Do I think that it could be lightly discussed? Possibly. Do I think this is more of like looking at things off into the distance, more so than like the football playoff expansion, which is basically right on our doorstep, and it's been rubber stamped, and we've got one more year with this current format, and then we expand to 12. I think it's more the latter. I think it's more like off into the distance. I don't know how much more, because let's be honest here, how much more money is this worth? How much more money is CBS, is Turner willing to pay for the extra games? What does it do to the calendar? What does it do to so money really will factor in here. But I don't know about you, but I don't get the sense there's this big push for it. Now I will tell you, I'm not as like hardcore negative about it is some, because it's more sports. I mean, I'm not gonna thumb my nose up at more meaningful sports, but you probably are gonna let up a lot of bad teams in, or very, very average teams in. And that's the tricky part here.
Yeah, I'm not really sure how to feel about it. I love what they have presently, and I think clearly, if you're talking about more of a good thing, you're going to have to try to figure out why that would be a bad thing. And maybe it wouldn't be, but I just, I do have some problem, as I kind of alluded to there, in fixing something that isn't broken. I know there are, there are like 300 plus basketball programs, right, that compete within this classification.
Yeah, it's in the 350s.
And you're so you're currently around 68 with the 4 that get into the play-in games or whatever. I just really wonder, is it purely a cash play? Because I see some of these access arguments. Well, these other people need access. Well, this basketball program's in a wheelchair and there's no ramp for them to get into the NCAA tournament. I kind of feel like that's disingenuous, though, because, and call me jaded, this will be a shocker, but I'm just really thinking, how could it be anything but cash? Like True TV needs to make more money, I guess. The pawn shop repo shows aren't selling anymore. How could it be anything other than cash? I don't know if you have that answer, but what do you think beyond the realm of money? What's actually the incentive possibly?
Yeah, and I looked to make sure there's 363 teams on the men's side. I think that money is going to be a factor there. Okay, so as long as we understand that's got to be one of the primary reasons. The other thing is I think this is going to be the pitch. Okay, whether it falls on deaf ears or not, I don't know. The pitch is going to be, we're trying to enhance the experience for basketball players by giving them a better chance. This is kind of in some way participation trophy-esque, trying to allow more players to experience the greatness that is the tournament because I thought the 25% part was interesting. That is something that I don't know who came up with that. I don't know why. And I don't know why there's this push to hey man, let's widen home plate, man. It's 17 inches for a reason. We don't widen it, for the pitcher, it's 17 inches. It's non-negotiable. But why this is like you're trying to kind of widen the plate for the college basketball player on the men's or women's side. I'm not real sure why you would be wanting to do that. This is a recommendation. I doubt this is going to get, and it's been overwhelmingly, if you've seen it, Casey, there's a ton of, negative press about the thought of messing with this tournament. And I think it's really weird still. The whole first 4 thing is kind of still very new.
Yeah.
Because they allow 68 teams in this tournament, but it's technically a few more than that because, you have those play-in games in the first 4. So, and that's kind of they're in Dayton. That's kind of a weird little side tournament. I don't know. I don't know what the need was there for that one to kind of widen the plate just a bit, but they did. So I don't know. If you had never, been to the tournament, and if you were just starving for some sort of runway to try to have access to it, I guess that. But Texas Tech is in a position, and they're in the Big 12 conference. If you're any good at all, you're going to make the dance more often than not, and we've seen that in recent years. So I guess I'm just not hardcore. Man, they got to do this. I very much was like that with the football. I thought that needed to be, expanded, and that maybe that's on the heels of it. That maybe there's a direct correlation. And hey, man, we got football passed through. Let's work on the next one there.
This is just so college sports, it hurts. It was like pulling teeth for a century plus to get a freaking football playoff established. And so what do we do now? Oh, hello, I'm the NCAA. Let's expand ours when it's not needed. Like we're going in opposite directions of what is actually needed or justified in reality. But that makes sense for college sports. It's just insane to me. I really am kind of curious to hear you, I guess, intimate that it's not likely to happen. I wasn't so sure that was the case. I really didn't know, but you kind of feel like this is more conversation than anything.
Yeah, and I'm just kind of going off of the reporting that has gone on since it has been suggested in the last couple of days. It doesn't seem like there's much traction. I think this is going to start the conversation. That's why I say if something were to happen
Gotcha.
here, I bet it's further off into the distance. And here's something else you need to understand too: is that the NCAA, basically that's how they their budget comes from money made from the NCAA tournament. Okay, I mean, I think
Thank you for
I
bringing
don't
that
know.
up. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like between 85 to 95% of their entire budget. It comes
I know.
from. Okay, you've seen it. What is it?
98%.
Okay,
98% of NCAA championship events are funded by the NCAA tournament. Basically, their
there you
entire
go.
enterprise.
Yeah, I mean, and so if you follow the money, it stands to reason if there's more money, at stake, or the chance to create more revenue, they would look to do it because the NCAA is I mean, kind of limping along here in many ways with staff, with just relevancy. I mean, all these things. So that part, you can kind of start to connect some dots there. But I've also seen that there's people that suggest that Turner would not want to pay for extra inventory. So is this something that, say they do expand it and there's like an initial first round, okay, is that a separate media contract that you could bid to ESPN or whoever? Again, I'm just talking hypotheticals, but I'm just trying to figure out how it works because it's very clearly something that would generate more revenue, or they're not going to do it. They're not going to do anything that would cost them money, so they would only do it if it makes them
Right.
more.
Well, and you know how successful this is as television inventory. I can see why networks outside of the Turner family would take any little crumble that they could possibly get. If it's like, yeah, we're giving you game 510 or whatever, like, fine, bring it on, because somebody is going to tune into that and we're going to sell commercials because of it. This is from the NCAA's Division I Transformation Committee, which has nothing to do with a woman trying to grow a mustache, as far as I understand it, but I could be wrong. And as Chris alluded to, the 25%, they're in pursuit of accommodating access for 25% of active D1 members in good standing in team sports sponsored by more than 200 schools. Like I said, NCAA men's tournament, not the women's, men's tournament funds 98% of NCAA championship events, yet you'll probably still find like the women's softball championship, they think they need monogram towels in the locker room or something for some reason. And I'm sorry, softball, you're probably not a high maintenance crew. It doesn't seem like. That's a bad example on my part. I just don't want it to wind up in like, I remember growing up, Chris, you have cheerleader tryouts and junior high and high school. And every year, the ones who didn't make it, there'd be one mother there. It's like, no, my daughter's going to scream and yell and dance at a game too. So we're making a pom squad. And then it just turned out you had a crappy like an extra crew of 50 girls that couldn't be cheerleaders. And then halfway through the season, like, oh, you got these 10 walking away. These people are bored. This mom's not as mad anymore. So it just boils down to like one chick out there, pom squadding it up. And you're just kind of looking at them like, what are you really doing out here? I don't want it to become something that is so watered down and diluted it signifies nothing. I think you have got, and I shouldn't say it's never going to signify nothing, obviously, because you'll have a path to the national championship. But in the age of participation, and I was wondering, I wanted to make a bet, maybe off the air, have to do it with myself. That's kind of weird. That you would bring up the word participation. Would you or wouldn't you? Because I didn't know, are we going to go to that realm? And you hit it. So I kind of feel like maybe that is the theme of the day. I'm a no vote right now, even though I love the NCAA tournament. I don't know why necessarily I don't want more of it. Exactly. I don't have a real cogent argument, as you can tell through the first 10 minutes of the program. But if it's only a financial incentive, nah. Miss me on that, NCAA. Find up, and I don't know, NCAA needs to pick up a side job. I'd go work at McDonald's part-time or something if you need more cash. I don't know if this is the way to do it, because also, Chris, I have a very difficult time skipping work just for the days that it's on right now. Like, what if there are more days and I got to come up with more excuses to not be working on Thursday and Friday?
A whole separate weekend. You gotta call it. Oh man, I'm kind of coming up with something, man. I can't make it in today. Yeah,
that's a whole new challenge, man. All right, well, we'll keep an eye on it and see how it develops. Obviously, very important to a sports fan because, for my money's worth, it's as good of a time on the sports calendar as there is within the year. We're gonna stick with hoops, but step back locally. Coming up next, I want to get Chris's thoughts on a basketball visitor that was on campus for the Kansas game. Chris has alluded to several times the possibility of additions within the year. Obviously not guys that will be on the floor, but when you have another Power 5 player on your campus, there's a lot of interest as to whether or not he could soon be a player for you. We'll get to Kyron Lindsay, the Georgia Bulldog, who is looking for a new home. Could it be Texas Tech or otherwise? We'll get some thoughts from Chris coming up next on Locked On Texas Tech. But first, today's episode brought to you by our friends at BetOnline, your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there. Pro football to the college national championship, Big 12 hoops, all the way to March Madness, soccer, tiddlywinks, water basket weaving. They're going to have it all covered for you at BetOnline. And if you love sports podcasts, you're going to find those at BetOnline as well. Always the fastest and easiest way to keep up with your favorite events and your favorite teams. It's your headquarters for live betting, stats, scores, and now with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more with BetOnline, where the game starts. Thanks for joining us on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. He's Chris Level. I'm Casey Cowan. Subscribe on YouTube if you have not already so you never miss an episode. Coming at you each weekday from out west of the 100th Meridian, where it's really going down. Thanks for making us your first listen. For your second listen, check out our brand new podcast, Locked On College Basketball. Everything you need to know about college hoops in one. Plus, you can hear from big-name experts, insiders, coaches, players, and even some little-name experts, I would imagine, as well. Shout out to those guys also. Locked On College Basketball right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. Locked On College Basketball. Make it your second listen. Chris, let's get to Texas Tech hoops specifically. We're going to take a look at the Oklahoma Sooners, fitting the description of the next potential victim, coming up in just a moment. They're headed to Lubbock on Saturday night. But first, I want to get to a guy that was in Lubbock for the Kansas game earlier in the week. And as a fan, I'm still trying to condition myself to this process. In season, Power 5 athlete looking for a new home. This is a former Georgia Bulldog. KyeRon Lindsay is the name, I believe. Can you give us some more context as to kind of how this relationship came about and where do you see maybe him heading in the future?
Yeah, so this is a similar situation to Jalen Tyson a year ago at semester. Jalen Tyson left University of Texas and was looking for a new spot. He had been committed to Texas Tech for many months prior to the coaching change and all that. But anyway, he decides to come back to Tech and then had to sit out the spring semester, was on the team, was on the scout team, went through everything and all that. And then, was eligible this fall. This is what Kyron Lindsay is looking to do. He played his high school basketball at Denton Guyer. I actually think if I'm doing the math right, I actually think when Davion Harmon would have been a senior, Kyron Lindsay would have been a freshman at Denton Guyer. I think the years match up that way. But Lindsay is somebody Kyron Lindsay, excuse me, he's somebody that they looked at last summer. I think there was some back and forth from a recruiting standpoint, and I guess went in a different direction, whether he went or the school went a different direction. Anyway, he ends up at University of Georgia. And He's played quite a bit as a true freshman. He missed a couple of weeks there. He was sick and everything like that. But he's averaging about 6 points, 5 boards. But here's the thing. He's basically 6'7", 6'8". He's kind of something you don't really have, which is length. And he is somebody that is a plus athlete. He had a ton of scholarship offers out of high school. He could have gone to a variety of different places. I think there was some thought he may end up at Oklahoma State, but he had a lot of SEC love. He had a lot of Big 12 and all that, so he ends up at University of Georgia. But bottom line is he wants to get back close to home, okay? So he goes and visits TCU while the Red Raiders were there over the weekend. Then he comes to Lubbock and checks out the Red Raiders while the Jayhawks were in town. I firmly believe that this is where he's going to end up. I think there's some relationships there. You know, I've mentioned one of them, Davion Harmon, and so I think that this is where Kyron Lindsay will end up. Again, I'm not saying that that's definitive, but I believe that to be true. And he would have to sit out the spring semester. Okay, so he can't help you right now because I think not that he's some, you know, first team all Big 12 guy, but I'm telling you, if he's on your team right now, he's in the rotation. Okay, he's playing and playing quite a bit just because this is kind of what you lack. This is what you need. He gives you length and athleticism. He's somebody that can play, you know, the 4, maybe some 5, but even you can spin him down and play the 3 spot at small forward. But he's athletic. I don't think that they asked him to shoot it a ton at Georgia, but he can shoot it. That's just not something he's done yet enough in college, and they'll work on that with him and all that and kind of figure out what his role is. But, yeah, bottom line is I think he ends up here. And luckily you have a spot, and this is kind of why Texas Tech has operated this way in the last couple of years is you hold a scholarship open because if somebody is, for whatever reason, wants to bail out of their situation at semester, you've got your hands open going, all right, here we go. You know, so this is back-to-back years where Jalen Tyson and I think Kyron Lindsay will do the same, and that's two pretty good additions.
That's pretty amazing to think about playing with the scholarship that way, and has paid off for Tech already, may pay off for them again. But I don't know. That seems like that's kind of a new experience for an ops guy or director of recruiting or head coach or whoever's sorting through all these things, because I guess there's also inherently some risk in doing that as well, right? Or is that just typically a scholarship that you've got to tinker with?
Yeah, here's the thought. I think here's the thought is that if you have a spot open, you maybe can get a player that you weren't going to be able to get originally. Okay, like if you're just competing in the regular recruiting cycle, because here's what happens: rosters get full. And like if you go use all of your spots and you end up with a bunch of guys that think they can play and that feel like they should play, you get Sadar Calhoun like you did last year, and then somebody bails out, you know. And so
wait, is that a verb now? Like Munson?
Well, but this is what happens. Sometimes rosters can be too. You know, I'm all about depth, but I mean, I think there's some philosophy that. If you have too much, it can create a problem, or then somebody's going to leave you. You just can't keep all the mouths fed and all that stuff. Right. So that's kind of the rub there. And then again, it's a gamble, and there's no guarantee that if you have a spot open, there's going to be somebody out there that one you like, or that two likes you, you know, to use it on. But you just carry it over, you know, and so it's kind of and some of that may come down to like the recruiting cycle in the summer when you're putting your team and roster together. You may say, man, there's not anybody out there that I think will make sense for us right now that either we like or that likes us. Let's just hold it, you know. Let's operate that way. So that's just kind of probably the conversations that are going on as it relates to an open spot, because you know, men's basketball has 13 available scholarships. Women's have 15. So if you're on the women's side of it, you can definitely fiddle with that a lot, because it's hard to realistically think you're going to actually play 15 players in a game. So you can redshirt, you can kind of do some different things with your roster. Basketball, this is a bit trickier because trust me, right now, do you wish that you would have spent that 13 scholarship on somebody that was able to help you right now? Absolutely you do, but that's not what you did, but you may get Kyron Lindsay because of it.
Well, and you didn't have that guarantee. There are no guarantees, obviously, that if you used it, that guy would have been some like fix or whatever. So
absolutely,
it's just really interesting to think about, having those numbers to play with. And you're right. I didn't know that number, but whether 13 or 15 for men's or women's gives you a little bit of wiggle room, I guess, with some of these. I'd be glad to have him. Certainly the way you're describing what he could do for Texas Tech on the floor. Seems like it would be impactful, but if you do have him as a Red Raider, we'll have obviously some time to wait. So keep an eye on that. There is some optimism, it sounds like, that Kyron Lindsay could be a Red Raider. We're going to stick with Texas Tech hoops coming up dead ahead. As I mentioned to you, we got something special cooked up for you on the Friday edition of Locked On Texas Tech. So we're going to get the Sooners out of the way today. We're preparing for Tech and OU Saturday night from United Supermarkets Arena. We will get to that matchup coming up next on Locked On Texas Tech. But first, today's episode brought to you by Built Bar. If you're looking for a delicious treat but don't want all the fat and calories, Built Bar is for you. You got to try it. We just survived the holidays, and I know a lot of folks' goals are to eat a little healthier this year. If you're like me, when you want to eat healthier but don't want to compromise on the taste, then we've got just the thing for you. It's Built Bar. With Built, healthy is actually tasty. Seriously, they're so delicious, you won't think they're good for you. They're perfect to help you meet your New Year's resolution. What makes Built Bars so good? For starters, all covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. And they come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, coconut almond, just to name a few. I'm not sure exactly how Built does it, but these bars taste just like a candy bar while maintaining amazing macros. And what's even better is they're healthy. Only 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar with a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now you don't need to wait around to get a box. For years, we've been talking about ordering your Built bars at Built.com, which you can still do, but now you can get them locally at Walmart or Sam's Club. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart today, walk to the pharmacy section and grab yourself a box of Built bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box, 4-bar box, baby, of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puffs. If you're close to Sam's Club, run in and grab a 13-bar box with our hit flavors, brownie batter and churro. You can thank me later after you've tried your first Built bar. Back with you on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network with Chris Level. I'm KyeRon. YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts, you got new episodes coming at you each weekday, so subscribe on YouTube so you never miss one. Back at it tomorrow with a special edition of Locked On Texas Tech. So wanted to get you set for Red Raiders and Sooners today. That is Tech in Oklahoma coming up Saturday night from United Supermarkets Arena. Will be a 6 o'clock tip on ESPN Plus. It was Sooners and Cyclones from Norman most recently for Oklahoma, Chris. What a special sports fan base they have there in Norman. They love their Sooners, don't they? But unfortunately, most of them dressed up like seats at the Lloyd Noble Center for this one. And in a tight game, you think a little noise might make a difference. It was kind of a wild one as the Cyclones were doing it all right in the first half. And then you had like a 22-4 run or something for Oklahoma to tighten it up there at the break. But Iowa State does survive. So you're getting somewhat of a limping Sooners team. But if you think it's going to be easy, man, you don't Big 12. I'm expecting another fist fight for Tech.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely don't support basketball at Oklahoma like they do football for sure. They would be the first one to run and tell you they are a football school first and foremost. That's why them being 6-7 this year probably doesn't sit well with many Sooner fans. This is it's tricky looking at the Big 12 race as we get going here because you can't win the league, this early on, but you can certainly kind of lose it or take yourself out or just give, and right now, on Saturday, you've got 2 of the 4 0-2 teams that are going to play against each other. I did not expect to say that about Baylor, who was picked to win this league, being at 0-2 to start out. West Virginia also at 0-2 to start out. And I would tell, we'll get into Oklahoma here in a second, but I would say for Texas Tech, this is going to be one of the more important games of Mark Adams' career when you look at it, because if you drop to 0-3 and you go, then you're going to, look at what's on tap for next week. You got to go to Ames, Iowa, and then Austin, Texas. And you won in Austin last year. I don't know what the situation is going to be with their basketball program and coaching and all that, but you've just seen Iowa State. You just mentioned them. They're really good. They've got one of their key guys that's hurt, but they guard. They're a handful. They beat the pants off of Baylor to start out the conference race. They're at home. So, and it's in the Red Raiders, for whatever reason, they just can't, they struggle to play basketball in Ames, Iowa, other than when it's time to win a conference championship. That was a good day that day. But so it just points to this Oklahoma game. You got to go get it. You have to. Oklahoma is a team that struggles to score. They are just okay. I think they're good enough to have barely lost to Texas by 1 point to open up the conference race. Then this is a team that lost to Sam Houston State by 1 point to open up the season, but they've got some good wins. They're very well coached. They just don't have a lot of juice on their roster. And the one transfer that they've got, his name is Grant Sherfield, and Iowa State gives you the blueprint. Because was coming in the game averaging 18 a game, and he's a handful. He played at Nevada, played at Wichita State as well, and he ends up at Oklahoma to finish it out, averaging about 18 a game, just kind of a combo guard type player that really, really shoots it and scores it well for them. And Iowa State was like, hey, man, not tonight, so we're going to play 4-on-4, but our best defender is staying on Mr. Sherfield, and so we'll play 4-on-4. So he had 4 points in this game, and Oklahoma really they struggled trying to figure out where offense was going to come from without Sherfield. But it should be an interesting one Saturday night for sure.
Chris, how are you gauging Texas Tech defensively so far? I thought we saw kind of the game that I want Texas Tech to be in Fort Worth, where it was a little more black and blue. And you saw some of that against Kansas. You do wind up with 147 points total, 75 to 72 between the two teams. But a couple of games in the Big 12 play. Where do you see Tech defensively right now?
I think they actually did a really good job against Kansas. They held them under their average. I think they're getting better. You could just tell that, because I think Bacho emerging as a shot blocker has certainly, helped things tremendously. He keeps averaging 4 block shots a game. That is something that, and I appreciated the Renard Bicehouse's Mr. Owens, man. He's a great dude, Tariq's dad, because I thought we hadn't seen anything like Tariq Owens around here really in a long, long time, and Bacho is as close to that as possible. You could just see guys are playing harder. The problem you have with Texas Tech defensively is that 2 of your best players are small. Okay, we're just calling it what it is. And Davion Harmon and Pop Isaacs are just not these long. These are 6'1" type guards, and they are 2 of your best players. So they are going to play a lot of times play together. And Davion Harmon, for his quickness and his quick hands, he can cause a variety of problems on defense. There are passing lanes he just simply can't get into, just because he's not 6'5" and with these long arms. Pop Isaac's the same. That's really where you're kind of at. That's why some coaches just don't like smaller guards. Some coaches will say, man, if he can score me 30 points, I don't care how small he is, man. It's like the whole Deuce Vaughn thing we were talking about, that we've talked about all season. It's like, man, if he's good at football, I don't care how small he is, he can roll. So, but some coaches don't like smaller guards. And Mark, he preferred length last year. And so Davion Warren and Adonis Arms, and you've got McCullough and Shannon. These guys are all like 6'5", 6'6". I mean, they could just reach out and turn the light off and sit down at their office, and all in one motion. And so this is just kind of, but so that part is something that you just can't really fix. You're just gonna have to deal with it. But they played hard. I think Bacho's emergence certainly is improving, but they're starting to grasp the scheme, and I think understanding what it takes in the Big 12. But again, it's just not easy. These coaches in this league are really good at what they do. I guarantee you that Pop Isaacs is going to have somebody in his hip pocket versus Oklahoma, probably Bijan Cortez, if I was guessing. But it's just and Bacho will have a good matchup against Tanner Groves, the kid that transferred from Eastern Washington with the beard and all that. He's arguably one of their best players and averages double figures, and he can step out and hit threes, and he's about 6'10", and they lean on him quite a bit. So that would be a matchup that would be certainly one to watch Saturday night in Lubbock as well.
I'm glad you bring that up in the way that you do, the length, because I'd really kind of taken it for granted how different it was from a season ago to now. But I do remember going into last year watching some of those early games, and I'm just thinking, dude, you got these Stretch Armstrong guys all over the place. I mean, I was so excited about what you were going to be able to do as far as being disruptive on the perimeter defensively, and you pretty much did that throughout the year. But that is a big difference. I think when you think about losing guys like a Shannon or an Arms, and I'm thinking about some of the dunks and just physically some of the stuff they can do for you offensively, I do kind of slough off the fact that the wingspan is not replaceable. And I guess we would have to say as well, Chris, that just given the timing of the Bacho stretch where he wasn't feeling good or was dinged up or whatever, coming into Big 12 play, you're not going to be as good as you can be defensively without that dude being at his best, because he's the straw, I think, that's stirring the defensive drink right now. And obviously that'll go double if you're ever able to get Fardaz Amac on the floor and present some things there defensively as well. But physically, you're a very different team. I'm glad you put it in that context than you were a season ago.
Well, here's what happens. Okay, so Mark's preference is to switch everything on defense. That's just how he chooses to play basketball. We've got positionless guys. We're switching all ball screens. That's just the way that he chooses to do it. Feels like that's the best way to play defense. So Bill Self the other night, I know this. They're going to switch everything. So when we come set a ball screen, I'm going to send my center up and go set a screen for DeJuan Harris on the point guard. They're going to switch this screen. It's going to end up being Bacho on DeJuan Harris, but more importantly, it's going to end up with like Davion Harmon guarding KJ Adams. Right. Once they would get that switch, they would go out with a 4-out 1-in set, and then all of a sudden everybody kind of spreads out the floor outside the 3-point line except for KJ Adams and Davion Harmon. And he's there in a one-on-one situation. There's no help defense. And that's what they did at the end of the first half to really build that lead. And so it was just good coaching, a tactic. And so you've got to, Mark, they've got to figure out, some things like that. But that's where that size really hurts you, because coaches pick on it. They used to do it with Davide Moretti too. On that one team, it's like, okay, they're going to switch everything. When Moretti gets involved in a ball screen, let's just isolate him and have him go one-on-one. And then you've got choices to make. Either Moretti fouls or we send help, and then we can kick it to an open shooter. And anyway, it's all the game within the game type stuff.
Yeah, and we're going to have a well of a ball game, I would imagine, once again. Saturday night from United Supermarkets Arena, regardless what the records are, you've got some really hungry teams, and any night in the Big 12 is going to be a grind. So hoping for another great environment. I'm sure that was going back to the Kyron Lindsay conversation, a nice little transition, at least for the Red Raiders, to go from the Frogs Arena to Lubbock in the span of just a few days, because there's a little bit of a different vibe, I think, between those two. So that may have worked out well for Texas Tech, and hopefully some more energy in the building Saturday night will work out well for Texas Tech again. Chris, appreciate it as always, man. We'll be back on the other side with a special edition of Locked On Texas Tech. Coming up tomorrow, that's Friday, depending on when you are listening to this. So check it out there on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. Chris, appreciate the time as always, man.
Keep hope alive, my man. Enjoyed it. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.
Yes, sir. Thanks for making Locked On Texas Tech your first listen, wherever, whenever, or however you're making it a part of your day. And we hope that you will make on college basketball your second listen. Brand spanking new podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network that includes everything you need to know about college hoops, all in one stop. That's Locked On College Basketball, available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. I just went George W. there. On the internets, on the YouTube, you know what it is. Find Locked On College Basketball. For the only Chris Level, I'm KyeRon. Thanks for joining us once again. We'll see you on the other side on Locked On Texas Tech.